You've been published. Congratulations. But now you want to be published again and no one wants to publish you. You're in trouble. But worse, you're an aspiring creator. You absolutely want to be published, but no one wants to give you a chance. So how do you do? No one wants to hire you. And my advice is to get over it. My name is Fabrice Sapolsky. I'm your host, and this is Fave Fridays. Hit it. Right. Okay. So again, this is my rule. Everything that you'll hear in that podcast is my opinion. It's based on my experience. I've been in the industry for over 27 years, and comic books are like that's my universe, like comics and graphic novels and publishing as a whole. So this is it. Now, okay. So when I say get over it, I'm a little harsh, but you'll get it. You'll understand why I'm saying that. Truth is, my friend, you're in a bad spot because the market is tough. And let me tell you, I've been talking to a lot of creators over the years. We're really in the lowest of the lowest, and I'd rather be smile about it or laugh about it because this industry works in cycles. So when people are saying comics are dying, they're wrong. When people are saying well, this is the worst crisis we've ever faced, no, there's been worse, and of course we'll get back from there. But how? This is still debatable, and a lot of people have ideas about it, including myself. I have ideas about it. That doesn't mean that it will be what I predict. So I'm not going to do the prediction games or anything. So anyhow. The thing is, the rejection is something that every creator goes through, and long story short, and I'm going to develop that. But long story short, you shouldn't let anyone decide whether you should stay in comics or not. This is your choice. This is your problem. This is your imagination. This is your calling. So you absolutely have to keep doing it. Now, it's a struggle. It's a struggle, and I'm going to tell you all about it. There will always going to be an editor that will find a good way or a good reason to reject you. It's easy. What does it cost them? To get your pitch, they look at it, or they don't. Let's say they look at it. Let's see the half full bottle here. Let's say they look at your pitch. They look at your pitch, and they don't like it. They just tell you no, or they just don't answer, which is most of the cases. They don't answer. They do like it, but someone else, one of their superiors, the marketing or the boss or whatever, doesn't. Same answer, same result. You don't get anywhere. So how do you do this? How do you get over this? Well, there are multiple ideas about that. And by the way, this works. I mean, this is a rule for everybody. Seasoned writers or artists also experience rejection, and this is common. How many, even very, very established creators had their pitches rejected at the big companies because it doesn't fit the current state of affairs, because it's not what they want to see right now. The priorities have changed. They decided that they don't want to use that character or this character, or this is something that they did 10 years ago and they don't want to get back to it. There are so many reasons. And even with independent publishers, you still have the same thing. You're pitching a horror series and people will say everybody's doing horror. Why should I do horror? That's actually what I would answer you. If someone pitched me horror right now, I would say look, there's a gazillion publishers out there doing horror. Why would I take your pitch? I don't want to be like everybody else. And also something that a lot of publishers nor writers or artists talk about, a lot of creators don't talk about, is that they usually send their pitches to as many publishers as they can. And sometimes you realize that you're the 20th publisher that received that pitch. The thing is that more often than not, editors are talking amongst themselves, even though they're working for different companies, and they're like, "Oh, did you get that pitch? Yeah, well, I passed on it," and like, "Oh yeah, I passed through it. Like it was terrible." But sometimes you really think your pitch is very solid, and that you're the only one that understands it. So what do? Well, you have to go independent, but this is for later. Let's get back to the pitch situation, because the thing is, again, as I was saying, like there's always a good reason to reject someone. There's always a good reason, whether it's you, your talent, or like the situation, the economy, the policy. There's always a reason. Now, let's put aside the independence for a minute, and let's focus on the big companies, because this is also one of the questions that I have a lot. I have a lot of people who say like, "Hey, can you help me get into Marvel?" Of course not. Like, no. Like, Marvel or DC are companies that don't accept pitches. Like, and it's said in their policy, every unsolicited pitch will be destroyed. For a good reason. Is for legal reasons. Like, if they accept your pitch, first, you have to understand that everything that they get, they can use. Because no one forced you to share your ideas with them. No one. It may be your ideas, but the minute you're sharing it with them, they are their ideas too. Because ideas are just like air, very hard to catch. You can't put air in a bottle. And so putting ideas in a bottle and say, "Hey, I'm going to sell that air," not going to happen. So clearly, this is number one mistake. If you want to pitch for the big companies like Marvel, DC, or any other big companies, don't do it. Try to create relationships with the people working there. If you can, go to conventions, find a way to engage online in a nice way, and not try to befriend on Facebook an editor and 5 minutes later send you a pitch. Never do that. Always gets flagged. You're flagged. So don't do this. Try to be subtle about it. Try to understand where these people coming from. Editors at the big companies are humans too. I feel silly by saying this, but you have no idea. And I worked at bigger companies than the one that I'm representing right now, FairSquare Comics, but I worked at bigger companies. As a matter of fact, this is very interesting. When I was working at Humanoids, I asked to be in charge of pitches. No one wanted to receive the pitches, but for some reason, I like it. I like to read pitches, and because I like to have the first look at potentially something exciting. But a lot of editors hate pitches because like they're overwhelmed. And I understand when you have already your plate is full with a lot of projects, you have deadlines, you have creators that are not delivering, you have a lot of stuff that is going on in your personal life. You don't want on top of that to be responsible for reading pitches, answering the creators, trying to find and not every company has a service that deals with pitches. Sometimes even like I saw that in France, interns aren't doing this, which is weird. Like, why would you give an intern the responsibility of selecting pitches for the big company? This sounds silly. Anyhow, it happens. So I was put in charge of this. And so all the pitches that were sent to the company were sent directly to my email. And I have to say, this is something that I'm still doing today, which is, of course, a little different because we're not that many at FairSquare Comics, and I approve all the projects. So yes, it has to go through me. So it's natural that if you are submitting a project through the FairSquare Comics website, it will go straight to my inbox. But now at Humanoids, it still went straight to my inbox per my request. And let me tell you, 90% of pitches were completely impossible to approve. And why? Because when you are a creator, you are pitching from a place of, I'm interested in this. Maybe some people are interested too. Maybe this will work. Or you come in a place of, I have this thing that would make a great movie. Let me see if I can make it as a comic book before or a graphic novel before, and then I can sell the movie. Wrong. Or I'm going to try to revive Westerns because we haven't had Westerns in so long. Why? Westerns are cool. Let's do Westerns again. No. You have, before you pitch anything, you have to open your eyes. Yes, that's the main reason why a lot of people's pitches are turned down. They are not in sync with the market. And yes, I understand the market is changing, and it's changing very quickly. But if you look at what's been going on for the past 2 years, or 3 years, you see that there's still a lot of horror because people are hungry for horror graphic novels and horror comics. It works. You see that people are hungry for stuff around magic. It works. You see that you have titles like some of the titles from Tony Fleeks, for example, that has like animals that are like the stars of the comic book. You have licenses like Transformers or like G.I. Joe that are like still big, Power Rangers or Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So in all that space, you have to understand that you're not on an island where you create a concept and that concept is so good that everyone's going to love it. Remember that when George Lucas pitched Star Wars, people thought he was crazy. And sometimes you have to be the crazy guy who's stubborn and who is going to go to the end to prove everybody's wrong. But it doesn't work every time. And it doesn't work for everybody. Let's face it. So let's say like you're an average creator like me. You want to pitch something. And when you pitch something, you pitch to an editor, you pitch to a company, you pitch to an editor. Just look simply at what the editors and the publisher is putting out. If you are going to pitch a romance series to a publisher that has no romance series in their lineup, chances are you will get turned down. If you're trying to present a superhero title to a publisher that has no superhero titles, chances are you're not going to get anywhere. And so on and so forth. So the first thing you have to do is absolutely not send the same pitch to every publisher desperately. It's like being a headless chicken. You can't do that. It's not possible. So if you want your pitch to succeed, you need first to do your homework. You need to take a look at what the publisher does and tailor your pitch for the publisher you want to be published at. And that works better. Like people who are straight up sending me superhero stuff don't get what FairSquare Comics is putting out. We don't have superheroes. Yes, we have one, but for a good reason. It's Photonic Man of Light. It's my childhood. It's my pet project. It's my childhood hero. I wanted to publish it in the United States. I did it. I'm happy. Period. This is not a company where you have superhero titles. So if you come with like a superhero book, I will not answer you, or I will answer that I'm not interested because this is not for us. This is not, we never had any positive response to any superhero idea or title that we got. The market is not really nice with us doing these kind of things. There are multiple publishers that are doing it well, and good for them. Second thing is, when you are sending your pitch, a lot of creators that I've seen in my experience, and again, I've seen hundreds of pitches, most creators are pairing themselves with an artist. And again, this is what I'm going to say is very subjective. But I always tell people, if you're an artist, you're looking for a project, pitch yourself based on your qualities as an artist. If you're a writer and you don't have a strong connection with an artist, or the artist is not the co-creator of your book, it's better for you to present yourself without an artist. Because A, the artist you're gonna select is based on your own taste. It's based on your own knowledge of the market, and it's based on how much you can pay said artist. That's not right. That's not gonna get you anywhere either. Because most publishers, I mean, they don't have a house style anymore, but most publishers have a very precise idea of how they want any of their books to look like. Chances are also that their network, the amount of artists that are submitted to them every day is wider, their network is wider than yours. So trust the publisher. If a publisher likes your concept and your work, don't try to impress them by trying to place an artist on the project unless the artist is the co-creator. Again, this is very important. And you would honor yourself if you are an artist and you consider, if you are a writer, sorry, and you consider your artist as a co-creator. I often say that to everybody, and I will say it all through my videos probably every week. The United States market is a writer-driven market. But that doesn't mean that we have to leave artists behind. Artists are just as important. And when I say artists, pencilers, inkers, color artists, and even letterers, all artists are important because this is a collaborative medium, and all of us are important in the grand scheme of things to make the book the success it deserves to be. So anyhow, I digress. I always do. You'll have to get used to that. So yes, try to pitch yourself. If you're an artist, pitch yourself based on your portfolio. I think I'll do a video on portfolios because I've seen so many bad portfolios that it's just like, yeah, so I'll probably do a separate videos on portfolios, maybe a bonus or something. I don't know yet. But if you're a writer, and usually 90% of the time, the project comes through a writer, don't try to select yourself an artist. Because you don't know the market, you don't know what's selling, you don't know what is what appeals to the publisher. You don't even think international. Like you're gonna try to hire an artist based on your taste, or again, what you can afford paying them. But who knows if this artist is only their style is only suitable for the American market. Well, when you're a creator, you have to think globally. This is a global world. Like if you're doing a webtoon, you will automatically think, oh, people from all around the world will read my webtoon. If you are doing a manga, oh, people from all around the world are going to do. So why in American comics we couldn't do that? This is silly. Again, you have to think international. You have to think about a style that will be accessible for audiences that are not your neighbor, that are not your state, that are not even your country. Because comics are a global medium. And when I say global, I mean it. Like I grew up on American comics and I was living in France. And they were just as interesting or more interesting than French comics for me. So it is important that you remember that someone that is from a completely different culture, speaks another language, has another ethnicity, can love your comic book and treasure it the same way you do. So you don't select your artist. You try to be smart about picking the publisher you are pitching to. And I guess the most important is to follow the rules. Like, not every publisher has rules. Some publishers just have a submission page and you send your 55 pages pitch. Well, in my opinion, this usually fails because, again, editors or publishers don't really have the time or the bandwidth to deal with a lot of pitches. That's why at Humanoids first and then at FairSquare Comics, I designed a pitch template, a pitch document that is a one sheet where you can actually have all the information that I need to decide if I would green light this project. And at the same time, it takes me 5 minutes to understand if it's for us or if I want to ask for more information or if I'm going to ask you for 10 pages or 20 pages or anything. You don't have to pitch a full project. This is overwhelming. We don't have time for this. So when you're pitching, again, this is very different from a publisher to another, but especially for independents, this is how it goes. Now let's get back to the big companies for a little bit. You have the big comic book companies like Marvel and DC, where, as I said, you can't really pitch until you're invited to. And you have even bigger companies, the big five, like the big book companies like the Simon & Schuster's and Penguin Random Houses and Macmillan and Andrews McNeil, and those publishers, usually you have to go through an agent. It's not always the case. Sometimes you will meet an editor. They will say, here's my email. You look nice. You have good ideas. Pitch to me. But most of the time it will go through an agent, and this agent will pitch for you. So you first have to convince the agent, and then the agent will convince the publisher and the editor. So it's a completely different process to get your stuff in the hands of an actual editor. This is also much longer, and trying to find an agent is hard. Trying to find an agent that pitches you is harder. So for that reason, you have to be extremely resilient and be stubborn. And again, as I said, not let anyone tell you can't do it. This is number one rule. You have to be stubborn, very stubborn. The pitch process is horrible. There's also another thing. And again, like, I'm putting my editor's hat back on. When you're an editor and you are absolutely blown away by a pitch, sometimes you will get the comic and the comic is not as good as the pitch for a million reasons. Like, let's say that the creator was really inspired to sell their property, to sell their idea to you. But then when it came to execution was not as sharp. And this is a problem, but this is the price to pay. This is the chance you're taking on a project. And there are so many like that. So sometimes that's why a project that starts like by a brilliant pitch can end up being delayed until the creators get it right. Or sometimes you have like pairings that are not really working, like an artist and an author that came together and are not really on speaking terms by the end of the project because a lot can happen. You never have to forget that publishing is all about relationships. It's all about relationships between the creators themselves, the creator and the publisher, the creator and the editor being at the same time a shrink, a midwife, a friend, an enemy, an authority. The editor is about everything, and also is trying to maintain the schedule and the budget, which is hard. And I'm going to be humble about it. Many times I failed as an editor. I failed myself. Like, it happened to me a few weeks ago. Like, I failed myself. I had one book that was over the budget, and I have to eat it up. I have to suck it up this is how it works. You have to be humble about this process. Everyone in our industry is working very hard. You have to be open to everyone else's suffering, and people have to understand yours. Very important. Anyhow, so after all that, you got rejected. What I'm saying here is like, these are my tips. Try to be smart about how you pitch, who you're pitching to, and also when you're pitching to, because some publishers will be more open in certain seasons. So that sounds strange to say it, but if you're pitching before Christmas, that doesn't mean that they will take the time during their holidays, if they have any, or their family time, to read your stuff. Or don't pitch during summer, because the big conventions and usually a incredible workload will prevent them from taking a look at it before a long time. And also, don't be aggressive. Like, again, a lot of creators, when you write, and this is our case, like on the FairSquare Comics website, it is like clearly written that if I'm not answering by 12 weeks after you send the project, that means we're not interested. Not everyone is doing that. Some other publishers are saying 8 weeks. Some publishers are saying 6 weeks. Some publishers are saying nothing. I believe that you need to tell people, if I'm not answering, that means I'm not interested. And honestly, if I'm interested as a publisher, I will call you right away. I will call you right away to tell you, like, look, this is great. But I also can call you right away and write you right away and say, this is great, but this is not for us. Because, again, priorities can change. And if my publishing plan for 1 year is marketed in a way, that doesn't mean that in the next 2 years, that means encompassing the moment where your project would technically come out. That doesn't mean that we're going to still do this family of books, or we're going to still do something in that ballpark. It is very, very important that, again, you learn a lot from the market. You try to absorb as much information as you can. There are websites like ICV2, there are like The Beat. There are a lot of websites everywhere, Publishers Weekly. They have a lot of websites where you can absorb as much information about the industry and try to, I'm not guessing trends, but try to understand the players and how things are going. I would also recommend, if you are in the United States, to attend conventions. That would certainly help you build relationships I was talking about, in order to create a rapport between you and an editor. And sometimes you have a great surprise. Like, I had people showing up at my table and saying, like, hey, we start the conversation, is very casual. We talk about the books that we're putting out. We're talking about my career or anything. And then they say, like, well, what if I had a project? What would be the process? This is the right question to ask to an editor. What would be the process? Don't try to shove your project to their face, to their throat. It's not not gonna work. Like, an editor is a human being. Like, we only have like 12 hours, like a little more in my case, but like 12 hours a day or 10 hours a day available for work. It's not going to be, we're not going to be able to do everything, and especially not on a short time basis. And even if you're a genius. Anyhow, so rejection, because that's the thing, like, can't be overcome. It's not easy because, of course, especially right now, the market is not really kind with new creators. It's not really kind with new titles. But remember one thing, and I want people to understand that, because that's one thing that again, this is so easy to understand. Whether it's a big or a small company, if you're good, and you proved yourself, they will find you. And when people ask me like, oh, can you introduce me to Marvel? Can you introduce me to DC? And I said, no, my answer is, but you should do it yourself. You should do a Kickstarter. You should do a project, do a webtoon, do a whatever you want. Self-publish, take a table at a show, showcase yourself, create your own comic book persona. And if everyone is talking about your book, these publishers that you're dreaming of working for, they will find you. That's very clear. And my story is a little different. My story is a little different because my first ever comic book was Spider-Man Noir. And I had no intention at first of becoming a comic book creator. This was not in the cards for me. I was a comic book journalist. I lived in Paris. I was covering American comics. I was very easy. It was very easy. It was very comfortable. It was like, I knew all about it. But then something happened a morning of December 2006, and I got this idea. And I pitched it to David Hine. That same day, we had breakfast in Kensington in London, for those who know which area it is. And he first immediately rejected it. And then he changed his mind 15 hours later, and then we started working on that book. But had I pitched my idea naively to Marvel, straight Spider-Man Noir sent to Joe Quesada, I was the editor-in-chief at the time, and sent it to his email directly, he would have been directly rejected, and there would never have been any Spider-Man Noir. The reason why it worked is because Dave had just wrapped a series called District X for Marvel, so he was still fresh in their mind, and he pitched it, and that was the thing. That was the strategy that we had. It was like Dave asked me like, "Do you want to pitch it?" I said, "No, you are going to pitch it, and I'm going to be the co-writer because I have no prior credit. I'm a newbie. I'm green." So by putting myself in the back seat, I allowed this project to exist. You have to check your ego. This is also very important. You can't have an ego about comics. You can't say like this. Someone wrote me a message the other day, like, you have to introduce me to Marvel. It's important and it's urgent. Urgent to who? Urgent for what? I'm not working with Marvel anymore right now. I mean, maybe in a day. I mean, maybe one day I will work again for them. But right now, I'm not working for them. My priority is to FairSquare Comics, and I'm clear about that. But so why would I do that for you? Nobody did that for me. It was like kismet, you know. I've known Dave Hine for a very long time, and Dave and I, we were always friends and friendly, and we respected each other, and he's one of the most brilliant writers. He's so underrated. One of the most brilliant writers I've ever met. And I learned everything from him. I learned everything. Not only I was reporting on comics, but I didn't know how the sausage was made. I didn't know what was going on in the kitchen when you were a writer. I didn't know about the revision process when you're working for an IP that is not yours. And I was certainly not prepared at the time to understand that when you're working for a big company, whatever your ID is, you are a surrogate parent. You are allowed to play in their sandbox, but ultimately, you're not holding the key. You're just babysitting an IP. You're babysitting your character. So that's also why I'm not interested in working on company IPs anymore. And again, never say never, but it cannot be a priority. Like when you have an idea, what would you give it away to a company that will not compensate you properly, or that will not like make give you opportunities? Like I'm sad to say it, but Spider-Man Noir didn't bring me money. It didn't bring me fame. And the only opportunity it gave me is not in comics. The only opportunity it gave me was to have access to a green card, first to an artist visa, then a green card, and move to the United States. That's the only thing. That's huge in my life. That's absolutely huge. And I'll always be grateful for that. But that's the only thing. Like, it's funny, like every time I go to a convention, again, I'm digressing. When I'm going to conventions and I see people dressed as Spider-Man Noir, they don't even look at me. They don't even look at what I do. It's still written, co-creator of Spider-Man Noir on my banner. They don't look. They don't care. And they don't care because for them, it's a character that belongs to Marvel. And it does. So you shouldn't have any type of attachment to these characters. These characters are IPs that are owned by a big corporation. In a case, it's Disney. In a case, it's Warner Brothers Discovery. And this is what it is. It is, and I'm not dissing them. This is what it is, literally. Anyhow, the strategy is also important when you want to pitch to independent publisher. And when I said, like, if you can't find your way into the big companies, it is the moment where you should ask yourself, well, maybe I should do it myself. And then I would strongly suggest the first thing you do if you're a writer or an artist or both is to hire an editor, because the editor will make your work look better than you even thought it could be. The editor's role is to make you shine. Like, being an editor is this amazing job where you're just as proud of the product as the people who are making them, except you're not credited. You're not front and center. You're behind the scenes. You're behind the curtain, and you're making sure that everyone is okay. And it's also a great way of being, like, keeping your feet on the ground. And I know that when I'm a creator and I have to hire an editor to edit me, sometimes I will, like, not be happy about their feedback, but I know that they're right. And that's really an important piece of data that you need to take into consideration. So anyhow, I promised I would talk about independent. So when you're an independent, and so your pitch was not accepted, your pitch was rejected. Well, damn it, I had a Silver Surfer pitch. No one wants it at Marvel. No one cares about my Silver Surfer pitch. Then you create your own. And again, I will take it back to, I would go back to my own story. After a few years of doing Spider-Man Noir for Marvel Comics, the phone stopped ringing. Dave and I were, like, in a place where Marvel was not interested. Our editors had changed. And so I was like, okay, I had about 1 million ideas. What am I going to do with it? And there's no such thing as an idea that wants to die. Like, if you have a good idea of what you consider a good idea, it will like keep playing in your brain until you let it out. Those stories had to come out of my system. And that's how I created the characters of Intertwined, the spirits of Hussein. Except my Peter Parker is agent, and his name is Juan Jin, and he's doing kung fu, and he's an immigrant. And one of the good thing, and, like, this is Juan Jin. one of the best ways I found to pitch Intertwined to people at shows is it's a hero's journey from the perspective of an immigrant, but it's also my Spider-Man. The same way when Todd McFarlane left Marvel, Spawn initially looked a bit like a dark version of Spider-Man. And the chains were like the webs. And in my case, the vines are like the webs. So the spirit of the earth, Juanjin, in Intertwined is kind of my Spider-Man. But then the project takes a life of its own, and then you create this whole world around it. And this is how worlds are built and ideas are developed. And 9 years later, I'm still doing some Intertwined. I actually have a new Intertwined book coming out in March that is being announced today in the new edition of Previews by Diamond. So if you're interested, ask your local comic book store to order The Spirit of Wuxing, Intertwined The Spirit of Wuxing. It's a great edition that we're putting out. There's 280 pages for $25. Like, very good value. But yes, so you have to create something that is of value. And at one point, people will care. Like, if you care about it, if you're honest about the way you write, honest about the way you draw, honest about the way you put out your project, you're professional, you hire a good letterer, very important. Don't try to letter yourself. This is not your job. I mean, lettering is a job and it's not your job. Unless you're a professional letterer, don't try to letter. Letterers are the unsung heroes, just like editors. Letterers are the unsung heroes of our industry. Should do another episode about letterers. That would be great. But yes, so when you're rejected, you always have a chance. Then you can move to the publishers that are more independent, creators friendly. But then you would have to look at the contracts and again, I should do another separate episode about contracts. Contracts are like a whole issue. But when it comes to pitching, you have a lot of avenues now. There are about 25, 30 different publishers that are already established. You can pitch to, including us, but you have so many that I can't even name all of them. I'm going to offend people, and this is not my intention. And if none of them want it, you can still self-publish. You can still go on Kickstarter or Tapas or Webtoon, self-publish, create your audience, make people care. In the end, as creators, what do we want? We want people to care about the stories we're telling. We want people to care about the comics we're putting out. We want people to feel something. And so as weird as it may be, you need people to care. And also, please keep in mind that rejection makes you stronger. I'm going to talk about Todd McFarlane again, but he notoriously said in many interviews that he's been rejected close to 900 times by Marvel before he was accepted. And he was accepted first because there was an opening, and they needed someone quick, and he was quick. He learned the hard way. So everyone has a chance. You have to create your chance. You have to work hard, and a rejection from an editor or publisher, independent or mainstream or whatever you want to call them, is not really important. It's not really an excuse. If you really want it, you need to want it more than everyone else. And that would be the lesson of my video today. If you want it, if you want to be in comics, you have to want it more than everybody else. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next week for another installment of Fair Fridays.